Okay, we're on the lunch break of day 20 of the Undercover Policing Inquiry Tranche 3 Phase 1. We've been listening to the questioning of the siblings of Michael Menson. Michael Menson was suffered a racist attack where he was set on fire in 1997. He was admitted into hospital where he succumbed to his injuries just over 2 weeks later. He was, for the first week, he was very lucid. He spoke to his family members. He explained that he had been the victim of an attack who set him on fire. The police never came to visit him in hospital, did not take a statement from him. And then in their dealings with the family, claimed that he had done it to himself, that he'd committed suicide, and that the family just were unwilling to accept that. I'm joined by Zoe Young from the Campaign Opposing Police Surveillance. What have you make of what we've heard from the Michael Menson siblings so far?
It's just so heartbreaking, you know, day after day after day, these stories of these families who've lost their loved ones and then just face this madness when they try and just seek help from the authorities who are supposedly there to do that. And, you know, to see these pictures of this lad and hear about them, you know, the close family and how he shared his success. He was in a band, Double Trouble. And I remember them, you know. And then, you know, as so often, you know, creative people quite often get a bit, and then the police using the fact that he'd had mental health difficulties to try and get out of having to look into who the hell did this to him. And I mean, at a certain point, just, you know, as someone who's had my own trauma, I can't quite concentrate and listen the whole time to other people's trauma. I mean, I know when you're doing something useful, like they always say, look for the helpers. And when like you're doing something useful, it's a way to keep going. I'm still trying to find my place in this and I really want to be able to listen back to it all afterwards. And I mean, I totally understand why they want the you know, the privacy of just having their voices, why they don't want to be in a room full of strangers. I mean, there's a whole bunch of lawyers and some people who are in with them. We're all behind a big barrier. And then, you know, we're constantly hearing from people who are trying to listen online that they can't. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, yes. There has been a restriction order in place. Currently, the way in which the Undercover Policing Inquiry operates is if something is said, it's often the name or a piece of information that is subject to a reporting restriction order. Because the broadcast is done with a 10-minute delay, as soon as it's identified that there's been a breach, then the feed is cut immediately. So usually about 10 minutes before the breach actually happens. And then the broadcast doesn't go back online until after that breach has passed. So it means that you're getting usually about 10 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes slightly less, but usually about 10 minutes that is cut out of the broadcast. Now, this morning when we were hearing from Bernard Redwick, that was... there was numerous reporting restriction orders that took place. So it was a very choppy broadcast. There's been one so far with Michael Menson's siblings who have been referred to as MWS and MSS. It's his brother and sister, essentially. I mean, yeah, the reporting restriction orders, all of them today have been totally understandable ones. And they've been totally understandable why they've been breached, because they relate to personal family matters. I'm not going to go into anything about what they are, but it's understandable why they've been mentioned by the witnesses when recounting what happened. It's very upsetting to witness what is being said, because the family members are being invited to relive the days when their loved one died. And particularly in the case of Michael Menson, this wasn't a single event. You know, there was the initial attack where he was set on fire, him going to hospital. He was in hospital for a week before he lost consciousness. And then over a week after that, before he actually died, the stress of the way the police just weren't taking it seriously. It's horrific for the family to have to relive that. And I mean, his sister opened up by saying, we've been asked so many times to relive this. It's very difficult to go through. Just even talking about his early life was clearly very upsetting for her. I mean, we can't see her, but we can hear the tone of her voice. Yeah. She's clearly very upset. And I think that it also underlines, you know, we said in the last broadcast how horrific the statements of the chair, Sir John Mitting, were when he you know, paid tribute to Bernard earlier on for being so calm and not angry and not showing any emotion. And here we have two witnesses who are obviously showing some emotion. And it's like they shouldn't really be doing that. There's the sense that perhaps they're undermining their own evidence by being emotional, which is appalling when they're talking about such a horrific thing that's happened to one of their families, the murder of their brother. we haven't seen any of the undercover police reporting on the family yet. That'll come later after lunch. But we have seen one internal police document which referred to the family as being they were having fortnightly meetings with family liaison officers from the police. Who were supposedly there to liaise with the family, to reassure the family that the police were doing everything they could. That's kind of what these family liaison officers are meant to be doing. In reality, what they were doing were shutting down the family and telling them that they couldn't accept the reality that Michael had done this to himself. They were very defensive about the fact they hadn't visited Michael when he was in hospital and lucid. They didn't visit him in hospital at all, but they had that 1 week window at which to do that. And the report was sent to the assistant commissioner that the family was openly hostile to the police. Now, after a couple of weeks of this nonsense from the police, the family engaged a solicitor, Michael Schwartz from Beidmans, and on hearing this, Detective Inspector Scott, who was heading the investigation, told the sister, "I can't believe you have allowed your brother to do this," and suggested any complaints from the family about the police's failure to investigate the murder would result in them not working on it properly, that they would lose motivation if there was any criticism. How can you expect people to work hard when you're being critical of them? Which obviously put the family in a state of disbelief, but also great anxiety that if they do make too much of a fuss, the police wouldn't do an investigation. But then they decided, well, the police aren't doing an investigation anyway. So they engaged a solicitor who, that was literally the last thing we got to before we went to the lunch break.
Yeah. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And this thing you say, they don't want to seem to be critical because then they might not do the job. And I've ended up feeling like that towards the inquiry itself, because we've got this problem with the YouTube keeps cutting for long periods. And we've been trying to explain to them that there's a lot of people who can't make it here, who want to be able to hear and see and to listen to this. And I think, as a witness, you want to have an audiovisual record that is consistent, coherent, that stands as evidence over time of this public inquiry. And yet, I've just been speaking to the hearings manager about why there's this problem with the YouTube, why it keeps cutting long periods out. And she's saying, oh, no, there's just a delay. And I'm saying, no, it's definitely a gap. And someone's done a calculation this morning that 45 minutes was lost of the speaker this morning. And I'm trying to say that. And then I'm thinking, hang on, maybe I shouldn't say this. And I'm feeling anxious that, the inquiry is not going to do the job, especially after what Meeting said this morning, And if those witnesses were listening to him say that, are they going to be even more anxious now, thinking, oh, God, we have to not show any emotion. We have to try and be the right sort of witnesses to be able to be properly heard by this one lone, posh, old, white, public school guy who's been in a men-only gentleman's club for most of his life. And oh, God, I'm really looking forward to the inquiry into this inquiry, as someone from Northern Ireland said that we might get.
Yeah, I mean, it is very frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. I mean, just to say, this morning's session with Bernard Radwick was about 2 hours long. For 45 minutes of it to be suspended, broadcast to be suspended, means that majority, we're only just getting the majority of his evidence. It is very frustrating, and particularly because the inquiry doesn't then later on upload a amended version of the hearing with just the offending part removed. It just says, oh, there's a transcript, and the transcript will have the offending part removed, and the whole transcript will be available. But someday, right? This is one of the things, is that these transcripts, though, when the inquiry first started, we were getting the transcripts in the evening of each hearing. Now we're getting them if there's been no breaches, we might be lucky and get it a few days later, a week later or something. If there have been breaches and edits are required, these are taking months in some cases. There are bits of hearings that from earlier this year, back in January, which have still not been released by the inquiry. I don't know if that's still the case. There was a case a few days ago. They might have been released since. The inquiry is not producing the record in a timely manner, which is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
So someone's just asked where we're talking from. So we are in a side room from the inquiry hearing. It's in Juxton House. Is that the name of the building?
Juxton, yes.
Juxton House, yeah, which is just outside the Royal Court. Just outside St Paul's Cathedral. We can just see, literally, if we look out the window, we can see the steps of St Paul's Cathedral just outside. So it's a very central London location. If anybody does want to attend the hearings, you can do so. The inquiry asks that you book in advance, but that's closed now. But that doesn't really matter. There's plenty plenty of space in the public gallery. Lots of people have attended without booking.
Yeah, just bring ID.
Yeah, you need to bring some identification in order to be admitted. But other than that, it's really simple to come. I mean, I really recommend you do come down.
Yeah.
This is the last hearing of the week this week. Next week, we will be hearing from Peter Francis, who's the undercover police officer who went whistleblower. That he's giving evidence all week, Monday to Thursday. So I mean, if it would be a really, I think it'd be a really interesting set of hearings.
Yeah.
So if you are able to attend that, I would recommend you do so.
Yeah. So Peter Francis he was infiltrated into Youth Against Racism in Europe. So last couple of weeks, we're hearing from people like Lois Austin who were speaking about that. So he's the one who came out and said that the spy cops had been exposed were not lone operators, were like single bad apples, but there was a systemic problem. And so he's kind of, I mean, I really am grateful to him for that, but there's a lot of people who are really not happy with him because he's also, he lied and misrepresented and infiltrated movements against racism for many years. Yeah, and he's a complicated character.
I mean, it's this thing that there has been a lot of the questioning of those who were infiltrated by Peter Francis, pointing out, asking if it was true, his reports on them at the time, and there were lots of falsehoods in there. There's a lot of fantasy in there, as is in pretty much all of the SDS reports.
Yeah.
To be an SDS officer was to be a fantasist. So it's no real surprise that one of the one who goes whistleblower also happens to be a fantasist, because they all were. That doesn't mean that what he has said about the existence of the SDS is in any way fantastical, because it's all been proven true. I mean, he went to the Observer before Mark Kennedy was exposed. Really led to a lot of us questioning the individuals who in our groups who had disappeared, and starting the process really of investigating them. It certainly led to us deciding that Michael Jacobs was an undercover police officer, a fact that was later confirmed. So there's a lot to be grateful to Peter Francis for, but there are plenty of things to criticise him for. Not only are people who he spied on criticising him, however, the police themselves are criticising him quite significantly, and there has been a lot of criticism from them, and I expect there to be a lot more next week.
Yeah, so he's going to be getting it from both sides, bless him.
That's next week. We will be back this afternoon with further from MWS and MSS, the siblings of Michael Menson.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just do come down. I think, especially while the YouTube's chopping up, and even for those of us who are core participants, which means that we kind of have special access to the hearings, we're supposed to have our own webinar, and that's just following the YouTube. We're not getting that. So even for those of us who are like part of this inquiry with our own legal representatives, we actually have to come here in person to really be able to hear the evidence, to get a sense of who the judge is and what his attitudes are. And it's really, really helping me to think about how I'm going to be preparing my statement, which I'm not going to be until tranche 4, I think. We're currently in part 1 of tranche 3. And all this language, we've got, there's some great glossaries online if you ever get a bit lost with some of what we're talking about. The campaign opposing police surveillance has loads of material. But this place, it's literally just this big office. You can come, all you have to do is give your name, and they give you a little lanyard like these things, and you can come in. I live in Cornwall, and I just got so frustrated with trying to listen in on the YouTubes. And just to be able to mix with the other people who are here, and to be able to chat to the lawyers over a coffee. And every so often the media turns up, not nearly enough. And I just wanted to say something about last night on ITV London News did a report about Sukhdev and Tish Reel with Suresh Grover. And it was a great report overall, apart from they did this thing which they keep doing in the media, which is saying that the women who claim to have been lured into sexual relationships by undercover police, it's like, we are well beyond this being a claim. This is fact. We are dealing with facts. There have been apologies. There's been compensation even given to some. This whole inquiry exists because of the work of these women who have evidence. This is reality. We are a long way beyond claim. And please, media people, I know you have to kind of have both sides and all that sort of thing, but there really is no both sides on this. It's a bit like climate change. You can't keep giving a balanced view to people who are just pretending reality isn't there.
Yeah. If you are unable to come down, we will continue to cover it so that you don't have to. As ever, I'll be using Twitter, or X as it's called these days, to post what is happening as it's happening with the 10-minute delay. And then we'll be doing another one of these videos during the afternoon break and at the end of the day. I'm not sure if there will be a break this afternoon. It might be that things wrap up and then there's just the end of the day, but there will be at least one more video. So thanks for joining us. I'll also
make a donation to Tom, Kofi, whatever it's called, Kofi.
Yeah, Kofi, ko-fi.com/Tom B. Fowler. It's in my profile if anybody wants to support this work. People support me in the past has allowed me to improve the audiovisual of these broadcasts and of the podcasts. And
these great little new mics.
Yeah. So if any support would be gratefully received. All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all again this afternoon. Bye for now.
See you down here.